Bloodborne is a strange beast. I find myself not being able to let this game go completely, and so I once again braved the streets of Yharnam. Is the experience as good as when I played through it the first time? No, it's not. That's the fate of this game, and the ones who choose to play it. Hopefully, they'll have one of the best experiences ever, but only once. The subsequent playthroughs are good, no doubt, but they'll never reach the peak that the first one did. I usually don't like replaying games because I've already experienced the journey. I've already done the things you can do. So why? Why do I come back? That's what I'm here to tell you. As you might already know, I've done a video about Bloodborne before, and the reason why I love it. So why am I making this video now? Well, the last few weeks have been exciting for Bloodborne. Together with Ratchet & Clank, it was one of the games featured as March's free games for PlayStation Plus. It seems too unlikely to say that this is mere coincidence. These last couple of months have featured a trailer for a new game under the codename of Shadows Die Twice, a new manga comic for Bloodborne, and a new collectible statue from the game. So naturally, I fully expect something Bloodborne related, but knowing From Software, they'll completely troll their playbase and do something completely different. We'll just have to wait and see. But I've gone off track now, so let's get back into it. The game itself is mostly famous for being freakishly hard, which isn't a false statement. Bloodborne actually throws me back to the NES era in terms of difficulty, with one major difference. The games back in the day where you played on arcades are mostly hard for the sake of getting as much money from you as possible. They often had this 3 lives and it's back to the beginning functionalities. It often felt very cheap, and the AI was tuned to be harder so you would die more often. A pretty standard tactic at that time to profit more from arcades. But whenever I die in Bloodborne, it's because I fucked up, not because it's cheap. Well, most of the time at least. Another similarity to games of old is the lack of a clear tutorial in the game. There's no overly protective hand-holding like many games today. This might sound bad, but there are other ways Bloodborne teach you how to play. Item placements, enemy movesets, enemy weaknesses and parries. The only real direction one is given is small notes on the ground that teaches you the controls. And some vague, suspicious dialogue from Gehrman. Nothing else. The rest is up to you to learn how you're gonna play Bloodborne. Thinking on your feet and being aggressive are things that are rewarded, but you can always find your own style with the variety of items and trick weapons that are in the game. The added flair from armors is not one to be missed either. M'lady. This allows you to forge your own battle style, and it makes each hunter unique. The amount of trick weapons feel perfect. They each have their advantages and disadvantages, their own quirks and their own multi-layered movesets. The frequency of finding weapons is adjusted to make them feel sparse and special. The amount of blood rocks you could get each playthrough was limited, so you had to really think about what weapon to max out. To be completely honest, the story of Bloodborne is great. It's fucking amazing, okay? If you don't like it, well then you can just go but I'm not going to go into too much detail on it in this video. There are other sources where you can scratch that itch, especially on the Bloodborne subreddit, where the users discuss theories and lore every single day. But I must at least mention The Pale Blood Hunt, an in-depth analysis written by an amazing dude known as Redgrave. In these 107 pages, Redgrave explained his own interpretation of the story and lore in Bloodborne. Sit down with some hot coffee or chocolate and enjoy the magnum opus of this genius man. I could decide to discuss the story, but I feel that the video would be too long, considering that I would want to discuss everything once I start. All I will say is that the story speaks to me on so many levels. It's something I didn't know I wanted before I became fully engrossed in it. Aside from that, there are a couple of reasons why I feel so drawn to the world of Bloodborne. I think the biggest reason is the atmosphere. See, I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday of the year, and it's because of the atmosphere combined with the horror themes and overall feeling that just speaks to me. I've actually never loved horror, and I rarely play horror games as I scare easily, but at the same time they fascinate me, and I often enjoy them whenever I play them. Although Bloodborne isn't a straight up horror game, it still has strong horror elements, just the right amount for me. That's one of the reasons that Castlevania is one of my favorite franchises, at least up to Symphony of the Night. It's the atmosphere, art style, horror theme and setting that makes it incredible. Music isn't bad either, of course. And that's also one of the reasons why Bloodborne appeals to me. If you compare the game to any Dark Souls game, I feel that the world in those games are too much fantasy, too much out there, while Bloodborne's world is more real, more graspable. It's obviously not something that could ever be possible in real life, but the distance between Bloodborne and real life is shorter than the distance between Dark Souls and real life. If you remove the deadly werewolves, the 300 coffins lining the streets, and the literal thing that causes fear, it could be a real place. Throughout the age of mankind, it has always been the mysteries that has drawn us and inspired us to great feats. The thirst of the unknown drove us to great lengths to uncover them. That's the magical thing of mysteries. The very same principle is used in Bloodborne. The inspiration from the works of H.P. Lovecraft is very clear. They lure you into this seemingly ordinary world, but that's at the top of the roller coaster, because it all goes downhill real fast after that. And instead of the ride carrying on like it usually does, they put a brick wall right on the track. See, as you start to uncover the mystery of Bloodborne, the picture you have of Bloodborne's world starts crumbling down, and the spectrum broadens into infinity. Not really though, it just sounded cool, which I am too, by the way. Making a world is hard, but making a world that lives, that breathes, is harder. One trick to achieve this is using characters, NPCs and other tools to make it feel alive, and From Software managed to achieve that. There aren't many NPCs in the game, but that's the intention. Bloodborne isn't supposed to be a happy jolly adventure with friends and teammates, it's supposed to be a scary, solitary, dark and nerve-wracking journey, and the world and design represents that. Try to imagine yourself in this world with otherworldly phenomena and deadly monsters around every corner. It's not that far-fetched to believe that one's mind might begin to crackle and finally break. Most NPCs struggle, doing seemingly everything to stop themselves from going mad, to retain that last bit of humanity. They each have a story and some dialogue, oftentimes about lore or story tidbits and hints, but they seldom appear, and when they do, the player feels a little less lonely in this big, scary world. It's very akin to real life. You meet other people, sometimes you help them or they help you, but ultimately it's a journey you have to complete by yourself. For some reason this speaks to me on a deeper level, an emotional level. One of the many things I like when playing Bloodborne is the combat, of course, the very heart of the game. The focus of a faster combat is one of the reasons I prefer Bloodborne over Dark Souls. There's no waiting around for the enemy or the boss to strike, which I feel that Dark Souls has leaned towards. In Bloodborne, every moment matters, and the players themselves creates the opportunities. It's high paced and it has high stakes. A single mistake might cost you your life. This is further reinforced by the rally mechanic in the game. If you get hit by anything, be it enemy trap or other, you can always reclaim a percentage of this lost life by attacking an enemy. This isn't a game made for turtling cowards, it's made for the very elite and only them. Get good, noob. Alright, enough joking around. I stated before that Bloodborne is a hard game, and there are a lot of people that agrees with me. But for everyone loving Bloodborne, there comes a moment where everything just clicks, and you turn into a slayer of whatever decides to come your way. You'll still die every now and then, which is a good thing, but it's usually because you fuck up or do something very stupid, which for me is every 5 minutes. In a plethora of games, whenever the player faces a boss, they almost always feel beatable. Perhaps it's just a gimmick fight, or perhaps the boss has a certain pattern you need to remember to beat it. But not so here. In Bloodborne, the bosses are huge obstacles to overcome, and when fighting some of them, it might seem that they're impossible to beat. That isn't the case, of course, but it feels impossible. They can be everything from huge beasts with razor-sharp claws that'll tear you apart faster than the speed of light, or they're otherworldly creatures that uses magic to decimate you. The variety is astounding, and even though there are so many beast bosses, they don't feel the same. They have their own lore and backstory. When fighting against these beasts and monsters, it's easy to forget one simple fact. No matter what happens, you are always the hunter, and they are your prey. In the beginning you might lose, or rather, you're expected to lose in order to learn. With each try, you'll get closer and closer to beating your enemy. You notice the cracks in the defense. The adrenaline is pumping in your veins, while the amazing soundtrack only enhances the whole experience until only one of you is left standing. You have survived. You have overcome the odds and you're victorious. You're on top of the world. This single moment will be unforgettable. The moment this first happens is usually the fight against Gascoigne, the first major obstacle that will decide if you're ready for the rest of the game. And if you manage to beat him, you'll only want more. It's like an addiction, and just like an addiction, it'll never be as good as the first time. Each playthrough after the first will never be able to compare to when you didn't know about the game, when everything was new and the challenges and worlds were yet to come. It's the same for me. No matter how much I play the game, I'll never experience it for the first time ever again. I could honestly talk about this game for hours upon hours, much to my friends' dismay. I used to think that the game was great, but fast forward 2 years and I even have a permanent mark put upon me to show off my love of the game. Yeah, you thought I was gonna say the game sucked, huh? It might not be what others would choose to do, but it's not for others, it's for me. Bloodborne is in my opinion as close to a perfect game as you can come. It's a milestone in game design, and it has made me feel such a big mix of emotions that the game has forever been imprinted in my mind and my skin. Even though it might not be right up your alley or your type of video game, I firmly believe that this is a game everyone should at least try. Bloodborne can without a doubt be used to argue for if video games are art. Its greatness is only matched by its aspiration. And I hope that the youth of the future might experience the game the same way we experience other classics today. That Bloodborne will pass down the ages, and as our bones turn to dust, it'll never be forgotten. And what better way to end the video than with a quote from H.P. Lovecraft himself. The appeal of the spectrally macabre is generally narrow, because it demands from the reader a certain degree of imagination and a capacity for detachment from everyday life.